Hey everybody, it's Mark T here. It's 2:30 in the morning and I'm making another video. Now I realize I've been doing these, you know, um, people and characters that inspire me videos a lot lately. If you're getting tired of those, I apologize. This is going to be the last one for a while until I can, figure out some stuff. But this one in particular is special because we are talking about probably the only other video game character that can tie for being my personal favorite video game character, along with Ness from Earthbound, and that is Nestor. Now, I'm pretty sure I discussed it briefly when I opened up this pin that I got last year or 2 years ago. I'm honestly not quite sure. I got this Nestor pin, and it just looked awesome. It's still here. And bam. Really cool. But I never really went over how Nestor, like, exists and everything. So, here's a brief story. Now, I collected Nintendo Power as a kid, but I was too late for ever seeing, like, the Howard and Nestor Adventure comics inside of the magazine of Nintendo Power. By the time I ended up getting it, it was basically like GameCube and Game Boy Advance stuff. So, just like much newer stuff, at least in comparison to like the NES. So like this is the oldest issue that I own, which is Nintendo Power Star Wars. Also, like drew on it. So, um, So, like, that's how I started with it, and I would keep collecting it up until actually the last issue, which I don't have. So that stinks. But in any case, we're talking about Nestor here specifically. So, you're like I'm not really sure what introduced me to Nestor specifically. Like, I was never talking to a friend. I mean, in reality, and no offense to the Nestor comics at all, but it felt like one of those things that you're probably never going to see unless like by chance you're like flipping through an old copy of Nintendo Power, or like there's this video game article that mentions it. I honestly cannot remember. I think I just by chance I was surfing on the internet, surfing old Nintendo Power issues, and I saw Nestor, and like I saw his design and the way his hair goes and how cool and silly and vaguely 90s feeling he felt. And from that point on, I was in love. And that's why he's my other favorite video game character. So eventually I found this really good site that I will leave in the link of this description, which is called the Howard and Nestor. Oh crap, I can't remember what it's called. It's basically just a collection of every single Howard and Nestor original comic, not the Nestor Adventure comics. And while I was doing research for this video, I found something interesting. Although for some reason, like maybe I'm just not looking hard enough, but I was never able to. It's really hard to find like the writer of these comics, but the original artist and the person that did the artwork that like really attracted me to the comics in the first place was uh, Shuji Imai. I hope I'm saying that right. He basically did like these fantastic artworks, and when I found out, literally just like 10 minutes ago, I looked him up on Google, and his artwork was like exactly the same style, the same design, just overall, like I could tell this was the same guy that did these comics that I loved. And yeah, it was great. So I have, as of right now, basically read every single Howard and Nestor comic. Eventually, Howard, who was in charge of the Nintendo fan club, left to work for what is it, George Lucas, like the Lucas video game company that ended up going downhill. I shouldn't be talking about that, but yeah. And then once that was done, I like that was like whatever anything that was on that website I was reading from was just what was there. It was just Howard and Nestor. Um, but then a couple of months later on, I found that there was a continuation called Nestor's Adventures, and it followed my favorite video game character, just going on adventures of his own. And just to clarify, the comic books, I mean, they're in Nintendo Power for a reason, obviously. Basically, they would discuss or not comics. They discuss video games that were going on at the time, like specifically like NES games, because I was like major at the time. And it was really cool. Actually, I think I do remember when I first saw it. It was in the AVGN Nintendo Power episode. So that was probably the first time I saw Howard and Nestor. But anyway, I've only read a couple of the comics from Nestor's Adventures. They look pretty good too. I mean, the artwork just isn't quite the same, and from what whatever information I picked up, they were done by a man named Art Nicholas and other man named Dan Spiegel. And by 1993, it had basically stopped. They stopped doing the Howard and Nestor comics, and honestly, it makes me wish sometimes that I was born earlier, so I could actually have, like, those issues, you know? And also I heard that in the 100th issue of Nintendo Power, sorry, Shinji Imai returned to do something. But I think the most special thing of all is that in the very last issue of Nintendo Power, which I did not find, I can find it, but it's gonna cost me a significant amount. I probably will buy it one day, but you know, that's for later on. But it was just this kind of nice circle. You know, the comic was called, I believe it was Nestor and Max, which was him and his son, and we see like Nestor's in his study and he has every single issue of Nintendo Power, and you know, after a short conversation, he and his son go to play Mario Builder, and it's just, I can't really think of like a better way to end the story of Howard and Nestor, and yeah, it was cool. I mean, it really bummed me out that I didn't get that issue, but beyond that, like, I'm glad, like, because even without the comic books, Nestor was basically like everywhere in the magazine. He was always like the leading mascot, you know? Nothing beats a teenage kid, redheaded kid with some spunk and just loving video games. But that's pretty much it, really. At least for the overall history. I do have an idea that I want to try if I could ever get my art good enough. At some point, I would really like to do a fan art comic, maybe continuing the adventures of Nestor and his son Max, and just see. But that's a bit in the future. I really gotta improve my art first. But beyond that, yeah, like. And you might think, like this is a character that appeared in comic books from the 80s and briefly in the 90s. Like, why do you care so much? And I feel like, you know, I'm a kid from the 90s. I was born 1991. So while I was still alive, when I first came to life, there were still 2 years after that had these comics. And I know it seems silly to focus so hard on a old mascot, but screw it. I like the character. I like the drawing. I'm gonna wear this button to convention in a couple of months, and it's just a really fun reminder of how a mascot from a old Nintendo magazine that was retired around the time that I became an adult just sticks with me. And I think that's kind of the point overall. So now you might be wondering, what am I reading now? Well, there's a lot of stuff to read, and this isn't an ad or anything, but a couple of years ago, I I went out for my birthday with my friend, and we went to just like this news shop, and I ended up seeing this magazine, Retro Gamer, which I think it's set in the UK or Australia. I can't remember, but this just reinvigorated my love for retro games. And it's literally just a magazine that talks about retro games and stuff. And I know that might seem silly, but I think it's really cool. I mean, it also like has ads for like retro games. Like let me see. Also, like it's basically doing what Nintendo Power did. It gives you tips and tricks. It doesn't give you a phone number to call, but you know, it's still really cool. Like it's just one of those things. And even more so, I think the main thing I took away from those old issues of Nintendo Power and those comics is that I really like the NES. You know, I have 3 favorite consoles of all time. The console I grew up with is my favorite, which is the Super Nintendo. The PS2 is my second favorite, and the NES is my third favorite. And while it might come in third, it's still like it's always set up. It's just right in that corner, right off of what you can't see. There's a big Toshiba TV right next to me, and I flip it on and I play some of my favorite games that ironically I didn't get to grow up with. But yeah. So thanks for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you're curious about Nestor and his comics and everything, and Nintendo Power in general, I will have a link to the original site that I found the Howard and Nestor comics on at first. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed watching, and I will see you all later.